Horizon Chess Home Rex, and this is Animal Diseases That Belong in a Horror Movie by the channel Casual Geographic. Oh god. By far the most disturbing video I've made. Oh god. Saying that is just like too heavy thing already. Casual Geographic and horror is just like goes hand in hand. And the worst video he's ever made? Yeah, okay. Not most worst in bad way, disturbing video basically. Yeah, this is I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, it's one thing to have some disturbing thing. It's completely different thing that the way Casual Geographic does, because there's literally sometimes react to his videos and I'm like, what the fuck, like mood is literally off, right? Some things I see, so I don't know how bad this is gonna be, but yeah, let's see, I guess. Remember, people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, so that way you can help this channel by helping the algorithm, so more people can see this on their recommended feed. And yeah, comment down if you want me to do any other reaction like this. And yeah, let's do this one.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
Okay. Spooky season. You knew this was coming.
Oh,
We're always
that's
talking about
okay.
all the ways nature and the things in it can put you on a shirt, but
This
we
is
never
Halloween
talked about how
special.
diseases can have animals permanently parallel to the ground. So that's what this video is. Animal diseases that are rated
What
R
the
for the
fuck,
regret I
man?
feel when I see what researching them has done to my search history. And of course, viewer discretion is very much advised, especially for disease number 1. What's a Halloween video without a jump scare? This photo was taken just outside the Caribbean Bay Hotel in Zimbabwe of what appears to be a hairless baboon. The depelted primate appeared to be an outcast, only following her troop from a distance, almost as if she had been rejected for her appearance. And according to a nearby vet, the most likely cause for this abandoned baboon's condition, mange. Mange is a nasty looking disease caused by parasitic mites burrowing into the skin, where their collective feces
God.
can cause severe allergic reactions and an unbearable amount of itching. That's why the main calling card of mange is turning animals into the most down bad version of themselves. And
Yeah, I had chicken pox, I guess. Wait a minute, how old was I? Guessing 22? I was 22, I guess, when I had chicken pox. And God, like, I like to think like I'm like, strong enough in like resilient way, right? I've had certain injuries where I'm like, yeah, okay, I can tough this out, and I did very easily. But I don't know, maybe it's just, it affects everyone differently. But chickenpox, the itching was like, I don't know, like some form of, I have maybe some form of OCD where like if something's annoying, I can't let that go or something. But the itching was like way too unbearable, right? And then I like, we are humans, we can communicate, we're smart enough to find cures. But what about the animals in the wild, right? Some kind of like parasite shit that makes it million times worse. Itching and everything, has to live life like that, right? Sometimes like even life becomes like way too much, right? But they're animals, what they're going to do about it? It's just insane to think about. It just hurts thinking about it, man.
while the word mangy is usually an insult reserved for dogs, these mites can be a certainty from anything from foxes to bears to porcupines, occasionally birds like eagles, and many, many more. In fact, the legend of the chupacabra was more than likely jump-started by a severely mited-up coyote. And in 1996, there was an outbreak of sarcoptic mange that griefed a family of mountain gorillas in Uganda, even expiring one of their babies. The mites themselves aren't a death sentence, but they slowly weaken the target, making them much more vulnerable to infections. And they can easily spread, especially if you're a wombat whose burrow mates with a walking mite mosh pit. The mites are so persistent that in Pennsylvania, a black bear with more than 50% hair loss is considered a lost cause, and not only is it retired from life, it's also incinerated so the past tense bear can't possibly infect any others. And yes, mange is zoonotic, meaning it can be passed on from animals to humans, and when that happens, it's called scabies. To be fair, it's normally easy to treat in people, but those with weak immune systems or those taking immunosuppressants can find themselves gatekept from a life of comfort. There's also Demodex mites, which shack up in hair follicles, and even a couple species that make their home in the human eye. So yeah, mange just might be the most aesthetically upsetting ailment here. The polar opposite of the next disease, because where mange is visually visceral, zoochosis is almost purely psychological.
Just like you see shit like this, like in the eyes and things like, oh my god, come on. Some form of OCD is flaring up. I also remember like watching that House MD episode where he just like looks in the eyes and there are like way too many parasites visible. They're like, oh my god. Parasite, like seriously, when you really think about the nature, right? Like how fucked up the whole nature is. Like when you really analyze it from outside perspective, this is just like, this is a torture, right? Animals needing other animals, literally food chain is like the fucked up thing of all, right? And this is all basically can dumb down to food chain, right? Viruses, parasites need these, big animals, so they suffer. Big animals kill each other, so that the full whole food chain, right? Like if if like, let's just say some intelligent being basically makes this kind of a life thing, wouldn't it make sense, like, make something that they don't rely on each other? But in this one, it does. So this is why whenever you think of evolution things, you can feel like randomness is all there, right? And it makes sense when you think about it, like why food chain would develop, because it's just one planet, one type of, like, it all evolved from one place, and when that happens, they are gonna basically eat each other, and food chain is gonna happen basically. So evolution wise, it all makes sense. But when you think about it, like if you believe in God and everything, you must question, like, why would God do this, right? Why would there be a food chain? Like, this is just torturous. Everywhere you see, it's just pain and shit all the time.
Logical. You've probably heard of the condition where animals in captivity do the same thing over and over with no goal or purpose, almost like they're in a trance. And one of the most popular examples of this are those videos of elephants swaying back and forth. Except zoochosis is much more than that. Of course, you have your swaying and almost neurotic pacing around their enclosure, but the zoochosis signature also includes excessive grooming, personal punishment like self-biting and self-mutilation, turning puke into an infinite food glitch, and coprophagia, even in animals that wouldn't normally do it. But the disturbing part is, like mange, it's believed that zoochosis can also be contagious. If an animal is housed next to one exhibiting the stereotypes associated with it, chances are that same animal will too. This captive psychosis is likely triggered by a lack of stimulation and enrichment, and it's more common in higher intelligence animals, especially those that would normally have a wider range. Elephants checking both boxes is likely why 40% of captive turned pachyderms show symptoms of zoochosis. Orcas are one of the smartest non-human creatures alive and can
So basically we make them insane. Is that what it is? What the fuck?
travel well over 40 miles a day for food. And almost a year ago today, in 2022, a captive orca named Hugo tragically resigned from reality after violently slamming into his tank wall until he suffered a life-ending aneurysm. And in 2005, a mother hamadryas baboon groomed her baby so excessively that he looked like he came out the womb beefing with wizards. To be fair, we can't really prove that this was zoochosis working overtime, but bro got the Mr. Clean Cut. That ain't a fade, it's a flea. But the most popular and probably most depressing case of chosis was Gus. Gus was a polar bear that lived in Central Park Zoo for 25 years. At one point, visitors and keepers noticed that
Zoochosis just basically means that we basically enclose them and make them insane, right? Some form of like anxiety type of thing. Is that it? This is fucked up. Seriously, man.
Gus would spend all day swimming in figure eights, sometimes for up to 12 hours straight. Keep in mind that polar bears can cover nearly 50 miles in a day searching for seals. Not only did the zoo spend 25 grand on therapy for the bear, Gus went on to make history as the very first zoo animal to be put on Prozac. Speaking of which, the 25,000 bones of behavioral therapy basically amounted to the therapist saying, "It be like that." This isn't an anti-zoo video or me trying to morally grandstand to y'all. I think zoos have the potential for a lot of good and a lot of bad. It's just that the bad can lead to a chronically pilled out polar bear.
It's not like, according to therapist, Gus is just bored and mildly crazy in the way that a lot of people are in New York. Yeah, zoos are like fucking idiotic, right? It's just there to, show the people, oh, look at that, look at those dancing bear, and look at how we, if you're gonna be like, people are like, when they basically eat children, oh, their death was painless, this and that. Nowadays, people apparently care for animal too much. Then how do you defend zoo? You literally are basically making these animals go insane just for some entertainment. Oh, look, I can see monkey. So, people go on safari all the time. Go to safari or something. Go to a jungle and see animals if you really want. But zoos are just insane.
This isn't an anti-zoo video or me trying to morally grandstand to y'all. I think zoos have the potential for a lot of good and a lot of bad. It's just that the bad can lead to a chronically pilled out polar bear. But wait, it gets darker. Because with how far removed humans have gotten from nature, there's a legitimate fear that humanity as a whole could be suffering from zoochosis on a global scale. That joke about
No shit. Depression is all-time high. Like, all the system we are creating efficient might not be the best for humans. The more efficient we make things, the more the more we are becoming antisocial in every way, every conceivable way, right? Nowadays, it's like I won't be surprised. Like next 10 years, depression is all time high, like ridiculous numbers. Because in the name of efficiency, we are just detaching everything, and we are just creating this kind of a social enclosure that we are stuck in, right? I think people are gonna force people to go on vacations and like on trips and things, right? Create this kind of a social groups, whether you want it or not, just as a therapy, right? Like this is like doctor's orders. You have to do that. That's how bad it's gonna get.
About us being no different than ants stuck in a death spiral becomes less and less of a joke as time goes on.
Seriously, this whole thing is so fucked up. And also the COVID introduced like work from home shit. I know some people are like, oh, this is just great. Who wants to go to work? Yeah, it's great at start. But by the end of it, you just like, this sucks. It's even more worse. Like this is making things even more worse. You work from home, like really? You don't even get out. You don't even want to put an effort to go out to do your job somewhere else. You have to do that in your home. The first psychological thing any psychiatrist or somebody tell you, that don't spend too much time where you sleep in that room. Try to stay away from it, right? You can really feel that. Like if you do your work in your room where you sleep and just stay there a long time, you'll be constantly looking at your bed and you'll just be depressed all the time, because your whole mood will be like clocking off. That would be your mood. Like I want to go to sleep, right? Even though you just slept, you'll be yawning and shit. There's a reason like people need movement and change.
Do you remember the Will Smith movie I Am Legend? Before his wife publicly neutered him and then smoked both his family jewels in 2-packs? Well, the post-apocalyptic movie started with a doctor attempting to re-engineer the measles virus in an attempt to find a cure for cancer, instead infecting 99% of the human race. A pretty good example of what can happen when humans try to play God with the natural order. Another example is what happened in Florida, specifically Silver Springs State Park. It's Florida's very first tourist attraction, famous for having a couple Tarzan movies shot there. And in the 1930s, tourboat operator Colonel Toohey was looking for a way to spice up his jungle cruise ride. So he brought in 6 rhesus macaques and had them placed on a small island in the park. And it was at this moment they f***ed up. Apparently, nobody involved was told that the monkeys could swim, and the moment they touched down on dry land, the macaques proceeded to swim out to the mainland. And following lots of multiplying without a calculator, there are now currently hundreds of rogue macaques, with a good number of them carrying a deadly herpes virus. Herpes B is an incapacitating condition that can cause severe brain inflammation, permanent neurological damage, and a permanent lease in a casket-shaped condo. Now, fear-mongering aside, the chances of catching it from a monkey are incredibly rare, but not rare enough to be zero. In 1997, a researcher was working with a rhesus when she was
Yeah, I mean, people really like this is surprising. Like STDs and things, can you catch it? Like people are this genuine question: can you catch it from public toilet seats and things like that? Yeah, you can. It can live off on surface like decent time. There are many STDs like that, STIs, STDs. Like I don't know the technical terms. But there are many like that who can survive, can spread from touch alone, right? Which just surprises me. Like, how is that possible? I'm pretty sure like way too many people are unhygienic. Probably doesn't even wash their hands after soap. I'm pretty sure like there are people like that. And among them, even if few has this kind of thing and just shakes hands with somebody, like chances is going immensely high that somebody's going to get infected. How are people not infected left and right?
Was splashed in the eye by indeterminate fluids. Even after immediately flushing her eye out for several minutes, the 22-year-old died December 10, 1997, almost exactly 6 weeks after first being exposed. According to the Center of Disease Control, since 1932, there have been 51 cases of people being infected with the B virus, with 21 deaths and an 80% mortality rate for those untreated. That same fatal virus is currently being backpacked by up to a quarter of the hundreds of macaques running around the Sunshine State. Worse, it's believed they shed the potent virus through their saliva. So far, there's no known case of one of these Marion County monkeys passing off the virus to a human. The problem is, the monkeys have managed to lose their natural fear of humans, and there was even one incident where the park had to be shut down after a family was threatened and chased by an especially malicious macaque. It's the worst kind of invasive, and it's 100% our fault, and although the virus peddling primates haven't caught a human body, it's definitely one of those cases of F around and find out.
Okay.
One of the most unsettling diseases in nature is a sickness that affects deer, known as chronic wasting disease. called so because it essentially destroys the animal from the inside out. In fact, this type of disease is a transmissible spongiform encephalopathy, a name that literally comes from the fact that it causes several sponge-like holes in the brain. It's like the forbidden final boss of trypophobia, and it's caused by a single misfolded protein known as a prion. This prion triggers a chain reaction where the only outcome is a canceled life subscription, and the only thing the victim can do is wait for the sweet release of death. Here's what the endgame of a deer with CWD looks like. It starts with a misfolded protein affecting and altering perfectly normal proteins. It's almost like a cellular level cheese touch, and the moment it starts, it's already over. Step 2 includes the prions exploding in numbers exponentially and accumulating in the body, the whole time the deer, elk, or moose looks and acts perfectly normal. The deer can walk around with this disease for 2 whole years before the chronic becomes critical. Eventually, it escalates to the point where the prions manage to break into the blood-brain barrier, where they start destroying neurons, putting enough holes in the brain to get it cursed out by an octopus, and slowly wasting the poor, unexpecting deer. Deer with CWD seem unable to process anything around them, including danger, and if predators or playing freeze tag on the freeway doesn't take them off the senses, they die a slow and painful death to starvation as their brains shut down. The worst part is, the nightmare doesn't end once the deer does, since the prions responsible can exist in an area years after the victim and can even be absorbed by plants in contaminated soil. That's assuming they don't just leach into groundwater. In fact, the only surefire way to eliminate a prion is literally that: fire. Except, it's not as simple as cremating a casualty. That'd be too easy. It's said that it takes heat at a minimum of 900 degrees Fahrenheit or 482 degrees Celsius to properly pack up a prion, and some sources say to hike that up to 1800 to be safe. But the part that makes prions one of the most horrific things not native to a horror movie is where they come from. It's believed there are 3 main factors that cause prion diseases. Genetics play a relatively small part, with only 10 to 15% of cases in people being attributed to them. The second and by far most common cause is the disease being sporadic. Basically, that just means that not even science can fully explain where they come from, but that it's like it happens out of nowhere. And the third is an infected deer contaminating something like a water source or a feeding station with body fluids and passing it off to the next. And remember, not only can prions insist on existing years after the fact, keep in mind that most infected deer look no different from any other, right until it's time to disconnect from interface eternally. That means that the 3 main causes of weight.
Oh my god, look, I understand about like animal to animal and shit like that, but they could infect plants as well. At this point, only thing I can think, like, fuck this, like, if there is any deer in any place, like, don't order any vegetables or anything from that area, whole area, fuck it, just skip it. You want to order some vegetables from there, check the origin, check where it came from, and make sure that that origin doesn't have any deer at this point. See, shit like this makes me think like, okay, you know what, OCD might not be bad, right? Everybody should have OCD. It doesn't matter how fucked up it is. Because anything like this, I've never heard of this. And it's just like, yeah, there you go. You need like a fucking 1000 degree or something just to kill it. Like, what is this, metal? How the fuck am I supposed to kill it with that kind of like temperature? Generally, you think like anything biological related, like, you know, decent temperature, like, I don't know, like where the water boils, like 100 degrees is fine enough to kill most things, most biological issues, right? Viruses, germs. Then this shit comes along. Oh, you need 1000 degree. Yeah, great. I have a like high intensity torch with me. Why not?
Wasting disease are completely RNG, and that is remarkably terrifying. And it's not just deer that can get packed up by prions. There's mad cow disease in cattle and scrapie in sheep, named after the fact that it can cause them to compulsively rub up against things like fence posts until they literally scrape their wool off. There's even a human equivalent, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. And while there's no known reports of a human ever catching CWD, specialists have warned that with the thousands of CWD-infected animals eaten by people a year, there's growing concern that the disease may eventually be transmitted to people. But maybe it's still a lot better than the last, and in my opinion,
that's how they jump species. The more you're exposed to it, the more, like, just basic chance at this point, right? That's how statistics work. The more you do it, the more chance it is gonna jump. This is why people say, like, think pandemics are gonna just come more stronger in the future, because like chances are just that more. The more people are in the world, the more things they are doing, the more diversity in the things that they are doing and eating, like what type of food they're eating, what type of regional they are, the more there is a chance, like, you know, lots of diseases are gonna just jump species. That's just great.
the most horrific disease in this video. Because not only is rabies one of the harshest death sentences nature can serve, it is 100% transmissible to humans. Rabies is said to bury nearly 60,000 people a year, and since the most common way to get it is through dog bites, it's the worst in places with a high stray population. Which is why India, a country that criminalized murking stray dogs, has about 20,000 names crossed off the census a year by rabies. And it's children that are especially at risk, with about 40% of deaths coming from those 15 years old or younger. Here's what it's like to be turned into a statistic by rabies. It starts with the virus entering the peripheral nervous system, usually through a bite. Then, it travels inside you through nerves until it reaches part of the central nervous system, or the spinal cord. From
I think in here at least, like they're saying, if dog bites, you just run to doctor. Like before it was like something, well, I don't know, like 18 injections or something. Then there was like 7, and nowadays like 3 or 4 injections is just fine. I'm pretty sure it's because of the rabies, right? Because rabies is, first of all, it's really hard to detect. And I think when you detect it, it's just like all over. Like by this point, you're fucked, right? So I guess it's like as soon as dog bites, you take this injection. That type of shit. Like this is insane, man. Seriously, man, India is like, you know, like what is the 5th economy in the world? India is so big and so many people in it. It is poor, but also rich, but also poor. It's just weird position, right? Like we can spend money on certain projects that are like, oh, this good, significant amount of money you're spending. But at the same time, we have like simplistic problems here. They're like, okay, you haven't even figured this one out. And animals is just another thing, like stray dogs and stray things just walking around like there is no system, right? So I don't know, man. There's way too many money that get wasted in something like making the tallest statue and shit like that, with, you know, way too high of money. But you can't figure out a system to make sure that wild animals, I don't know, there is a shelter for them or something. Just to, you know, you can't just completely remove them, but not at this level, right? The level of dogs and things just walking around. Come on, man, it's just fucked up.
From there, it's a straight shot directly to the brain, and at this point, you can start drafting your will cause ain't no way. While you can treat the virus before it reaches the brain, once it does, you're almost guaranteed to become a WUS. The virus then multiplies, then spreads throughout the body, slowly killing you from the brain out. But the underrated and truly sinister aspect of rabies is how it seemingly rewires your brain for its own purposes. One of the telltale signs of rabies is a crippling fear of water, where just the sight or suggestion of it can cause incredibly painful spasms in the throat and larynx. At the same time, the virus attacks the salivary glands, causing excessive drooling and the foaming at the mouth the disease is famous for. And that's because the virus is most concentrated in the mouth, and swallowing or drinking water would dilute it, so the hydrophobia helps keep the mouth and all the nastiness inside as potent as possible. And that's not the only way rabies manipulates its mark. There's believed to be 3 stages of rabies in animals. You got the prodromal stage, and that's where the animal might start showing minor changes in behavior. And then you got the phase likely everyone associates with rabies, the excitative stage. It's been called furious rabies since it's characterized by heightened aggression and random outbursts of violence. Animals that would normally be wary of people, such as foxes, can attack completely out of nowhere with bites, and remember, being a water bigot just makes that bite that much more toxic. And then there's the paralytic or dumb stage, where the animal appears unaware and disconnected from the world around it. This is where you might see a normally introverted mammal show zero fear in humans, but don't be fooled, they're still liable to bite to serve the virus's purpose. The nightmare usually ends with the animal flatlining to respiratory arrest as its body finally just gives up. And your fate is almost no better if you're a human, since rabies has one of the highest KD ratios of any disease, even though it's also one of the oldest. It flexes a nearly 100% fatality rate, but nearly means there's still a chance. In 2004, 15-year-old Gina Giese contracted rabies after being infected by a bat.
Oh God. I don't know, man. The image of that kid and, you know, the another guy with rabies, just like knowing that they probably didn't survive and seeing their state, seeing how this kind of like virus, whatever, basically taking over your whole biology, is like controlling you, because it is controlling you. You don't want to drink water because this virus thing doesn't want you to. That's how it altered your brain in a way, right? It's basically taking over your whole thing. Taking over your brain is like taking over you. What you are is your brain. Everything is just like, I don't know, your vehicle or something. Your heart is like a pump. Every other organ is like, your brain is what makes you you. That is you. That's your consciousness. If you transfer your brain to somebody else's body, when you wake up, you'll be in somebody else's body. You think and feel everything there. That is, yeah. when your brain gets like over, taken over like that, where even your will is not yours. That's just so fucked up. And seeing that clip of, like I said, that kid and that guy basically drinking water just becoming a problem. This is like, I don't know. God, I knew this video was gonna be depressing, but that's just like too much, man. It's just, it's fucked up, man.
And the moment she started experiencing symptoms, she was, statistically speaking, a walking corpse. Dr. Willoughby, who had studied up on rabies, figured their last chance was to put the teenager in a coma in a last-ditch effort to save her brain and give her body a reasonable chance to fight off the virus. About a week after she was induced, Gina miraculously started producing rabies antibodies, and after Eurostepping death, she would go through the grueling rehab of relearning how to walk, talk, and even stand. Cause even when you're lucky, it ain't easy being geezy. She became the first person to ever survive the rabies virus without a vaccination, and even went on to start a family. But don't get it twisted, the Milwaukee protocol that saved her has been used on 41 people, and only 6 have survived. The ones that do still run the risk of waking up severely disabled, which is the best you can do when negotiating with death, since that's exactly what treating rabies is. It's a horrifically debilitating disease, and even though it takes about 1 to 3 months to show symptoms after being infected, there have been cases of people walking around with the virus for 7 years. At the same time, if the virus manages to invade you close enough to your brain, you can easily be down bad less than a week after being exposed. With a virtually 100% kill rate, and the thousands that lose their lives to it a year, it's definitely one of the most unforgiving viruses out there. Which is why the greatest basketball player of all time isn't Michael Jordan, LeBron James, or even Kobe Bryant. It's Manu Ginobili. Because during a Spurs-Kings game in 2009, a bat managed to find its way inside the arena, causing everyone to immediately panic. Until the 6'5" Argentinian backhanded the bat and put it out of commission, and proceeded to help lead his team to a 20-point win, along with a victory by TKO against the bat. One man managed to potentially solo one of the deadliest viruses of all time, and he wasn't even a starter. And you'll never guess what day this happened. Yeah, that's right. Happy Halloween, and stay safe out there.
Oh, God. Yeah. The point is, when you're talking about stats like this, you're basically more likely to die in a car accident than you're gonna die with rabies. But still, holy shit, all those clips of people, like, when you know like chances are close to zero of you surviving, and you see these clips of people suffering knowing their fate, I don't know what, just like too much, man, right? Especially the kid, right? Whenever, shit like this happens to kid, knowing that kid is suffering and all that, it's just too fucked up, man. Rabies is like one of those things, like straight out of, like he said, like horror movie. I should have guessed that when I saw the title, like that's where this is going. Because rabies is like that thing, like holy shit. How is this thing real? That's what your question. When, if one can exist, so can 10. So what other thing that makes me afraid of this, like more things like rabies could exist in the future. Which is like, what the fuck, man? The whole our system in our earth is just fucked up, where organism basically attacks organism and the whole food chain shit. That just makes this a horror movie. The better we understand, like, CRISPR and the genetic shit, when we get hold of that, we can remove all this shit. We can even remove the food chain if we really want. And that's what's the biggest thing that's going to be like biggest advancement in science. It might happen gradually, but that would be like, oh, this is like, we're definitely going to the next phase of humanity if we do that. Like whole planet would look different, right? Because first of all the viruses and germs are like, just gone if you do that. But yeah. Alright, well, that was animal diseases that belong in a horror movie. Yeah, seriously. My channel, Casual Geographic. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.